Hi, it's Jo
and Steve
from Freshagenda, and today we thought we'd do a bit of a Q&A session. We've had a bit of media activity following on from the events of the annual general meeting for Murray Goulburn last week, so we thought we'd go over some of the questions that we've been asked.
Well, it's a very good question. We've been asked that by many people. I guess, yes, it is the biggest deal. We think it is the biggest deal for various reasons. I suppose it is the not only by its size, but also we're seeing the departure of the largest cooperative in the industry's supply chain. And I guess it's a major consolidation step, which everyone's been talking about for years. That's all happened at once. So the nature, the industry structure as a result of this is going to be quite different.
It is fairly significant, isn't it? Because it's hard to think of another global exporting industry that doesn't have a major cooperative that dominates the industry. It means it's quite an unusual structure in terms of dairy worldwide, doesn't it?
Yeah, we see other industries where big co-ops are in trouble. South America is a good example right now, and that's collapsed production. Will that happen here? Good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
So, changes in the industry, Jo, what do you think?
Well, obviously that change from a price-setting cooperative in Southern Australia is a fairly significant one, and from a farm gate perspective, that's going to be the major one. I think, we should also preface this discussion with this deal hasn't gone through.
No, there's always a possibility of a no vote or a total rejection by shareholders. And I suppose we'll talk about it later, I guess, but could something else come from the clouds? Yeah,
so the dynamics around the industry, no price setting cooperative, but still a very competitive farm gate price environment, and Saputo, the prospective bidder, has already flagged that they'll match their current price and pay a loyalty payment to try and secure that milk from Murray Goulburn suppliers, because that's the key risk for Saputo or anyone buying this business, isn't it? That they'll continue to hemorrhage milk, and that will make those assets very difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the risk is the industry hemorrhages milk from here.
Yeah.
So the need for stability, and that's, ironically, MG suppliers get a $6 milk price this year. But the risk for industry volumes is fairly large with the uncertainty around the ability for that supply base to be maintained, but also I guess a lot of traditional farmers looking at this and going, oh, that's my time to go out.
Yes.
With the demise of their co-op, not trusting other structures. There'd be a bit of that out there.
Yeah.
So whether that step or that measure in the deal can hold milk is a big one for the industry and the capacity of the total sector. I guess the other thing, this thing about a price setting co-op, you can take the view, and I do, that the industry hasn't had a strong cooperative setting a stiff price for about a decade. We've had recent measures by MG which prove false, to overpay what the market was paying for product and turn that into milk. But go back beyond that, when we go through, since the major drought, when industry volumes suffered and we didn't see growth occurring, I actually think we've had a pretty lame price setting mechanism from the major player. You've just got to go and talk to execs of other companies to get a feel for the comfort they had in setting milk values in that period, because they didn't see the major cooperative being such a strong player in the value chain. Now that the intention of the changes since 2012 were to arrest that, but they came unstuck with overreach.
Yes.
So I guess, does that really change? We'll still need, there'll be a call for greater transparency now. It's a little harder to see what's theoretically setting prices.
What that baseline is, yeah.
We've got plenty of activity in that space, I guess, that will attempt to convert the signals into what it might mean for farmers, and that's probably a direction the industry's got to look at.
Yeah, I suppose the other thing in terms of changes to the industry is this is unlikely to be a one-step process. Leaving aside the fact that this deal that's on the table has a long way to go, it's unlikely that anyone will take on the whole business holus bolus and keep it that way. It's quite likely that different parts of the current MG footprint will be divested to different buyers. So we could see, we are seeing a bit of a consolidation, but that could be temporary. So
totally agree.
Yeah, that's right. We've had quite a few questions from the media asking what differences consumers see. Whether consumers see very deeply into the dairy industry despite all the media coverage that the dairy industry gets, I don't know that their understanding of foreign ownership issues is that deep, or the industry dynamics. I suppose on a simplistic level, those long-term private label contracts that Murray Goulburn has, if there's a change of ownership, they're up for renegotiation. At a micro level, that's one thing that you could say that consumers might see a difference or not. But in terms of brands on shelves,
no, I don't think they're going to see much difference at all. And do Australian consumers really worry about the ownership of the company that they're buying the product for? Do they worry about where the milk comes? I think in dairy they probably worry about where, if they do at all, where's that milk coming from? There's been a revival of interest. Certainly we've seen it in the way that the market's changed in milk categories and some other products. Interest in, is the farmer getting
a fair deal
and paid for their milk on a fair basis, etc. But going back to the ownership of the company, I think it's a small issue.
Yeah, well, consumers will say that they like Australian owned and they like support Australian owned, but often it comes down to, what do I like? What's the price this week? There's not perhaps the deep thought that gets attributed to consumer purchasing decisions that...
Aspiration rarely shows through in behaviour.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it seems like the sale process that occurred was tight and brief. I think those in the game that have been looking at Murray Goulburn for some time have been looking... would someone from the clouds do better? Look, I think realistically, no, there isn't another larger offer waiting to swoop. Some mythical Chinese buyer offering $2 a unit or the like is highly unlikely. In terms of the industry players, there's a process that's yielded the best offer in terms of numbers. But think back, someone who's going to be buying this business is going to be taking a business that's making losses.
Yep.
There's been a quick spiral, and that death spiral, I guess we're showing that chart now. So a loss-making company, if someone is going to be able to pay a higher price, they need synergies. They need to fold this into something else and be able to reward the owners of the MG business for some of that value that comes from putting one together and getting three.
Yeah.
So I guess that's how the milk can be best used to absorb capacity and improve product reach by an existing player. So I think we've been through a process that's pulled out the best that's available. Sure, a last minute from the clouds bid with some silly money might come about, but don't wait for it and don't hope that this is the best available.
And I guess in terms of the prospective buyer that we have in Saputo, as you say, it's an existing player. They are a global company. They do understand the landscape that they're buying into, which, someone from the clouds, from big Chinese money that's been speculated a lot about in the media, we've seen that come unstuck on a much smaller scale than this. So in terms of, shareholders or suppliers weighing up what their options are now, if you want to be a continuing supplier, you would want a player that really understands the game that they're entering into and has a long-term strategic view of this deal.
And appreciates the difficulty of executing what they've got to do from here, because it will be difficult.
Yeah.
I guess some of the I know some of the talk we listened on the AGM questions, and some of the talk is about grief and frustration.
Yes.
That did it, could we have done better here?
Or did it even have to come to this?
Did it have to come to this? Yeah. Well,
and that's that spiral argument again.
Yeah, I guess it's happened.
Yes.
I mean, was there an opportunity earlier to arrest this decline? I think it was, and I think it goes back to how farmers were treated and spoken to just after at the time and just after the events of April 2016 that's led to this process. And there have been plenty of points along the way where that might have been arrested or that might have been corrected by a better approach to reality of what had occurred, and how rather than treating farmers as the victims of that, or the farmers paid for the mistakes. Seems, let's be realistic, and therefore could a different course be taken? Plenty, but we're here. Yeah. That history is cast.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing. Yes.
You're only you can work with what you got.
That's right,
and that's happened.
Yeah. So this is more a corporate-y, finance-y question that I think is right up your alley, Steve. Is this question of the form of the sale, that it's not the complete, shares and units and everything in this sale? What's the rationale behind that?
So it's easier to take the assets and business as a going concern than units, because I guess there's some there's a deal to be done with the unit holders that's within that parallel, that twin structure of MG, the company, and the unit trust. And I guess there's some legal actions hanging around. There's still the uncertainty of what comes of that, and what's the penalty that's down the track if there is one. So clearing the uncertainty, the simplest way for a buyer to take this is to buy the bricks and mortar and the business, and rather than the complexities of an entity that's got something to unravel.
So it's likely to be a cleaner process because of the way that this deal's being approached, to take us to sort of cleave off all that that part of the business that's subject to legal issues and all that sort of stuff, and just make it about the
other major issue in this is how easy it is to get the deal approved.
Yes.
Because if you're going to convince shareholders and unit holders to agree to this process, you need a very high percentage, upwards of 75%, I think, or someone said 90% in the detail, that whereas sale of the business requires 50%. Being realistic, no one is going to get a deal up that requires that high level of acceptance.
Yeah.
And that's just a reality.
And 50% is not an insurmountable hurdle.
No.
Based on what we heard at the AGM and the sort of discussions going on around the industry, there are a lot of unhappy people. So there is a job to do from here in terms of getting shareholders comfortable with this deal, isn't there?
Absolutely. So I think in this question we covered some of the issues with this, and this is again another good one about, is it too late, or was this the best way possible? Back to that issue of, if someone's going to make the most of this, they can do it with a milk pool and a group of assets. Sure, there may be some breakup beyond this once completed, if there are business units or activities that don't fit the Saputo business. But to break MG up and sell off what might be the good bits, you usually, if you want to sell an asset that's got value to someone else, some milk must go with that.
Yes.
And then you ultimately face the dilemma. The business has been in a spiral, that death spiral, the co-op death spiral. And if you start hiving off good assets and milk, you're left then with a whole lot of problems, or a whole lot of write-off that ultimately
comes back to the
shareholders.
Yeah.
So the best way to realise the fullest value possible is to sell the business while you can as a going concern, and get
let
some
the buyer,
reward. Reward some of those synergies that are there.
Yeah.
So I think that probably wraps up the main points we've asked. We thought it was useful to put this together and just wrap it up in a little video, and hope you've enjoyed it.